So thank you. Thank you for coming. Welcome back to the conference. Can you hear me? It is... Caterina, si sente? So I would call the first opening speaker. If people can see it, I can call Pablo Méndez de León on the stage. Pablo? Thank you. And then Pierluigi Di Palma will follow. Thank you. Please have a seat.
So you want me to sit or to... Okay, I start. Good morning, dear friends, participants. Laura, of course, to begin with, the master of ceremony of this fantastic conference here of these days. It is an immense pleasure for me to welcome you from this place, but that immense pleasure is at the same time also mitigated by the events which happened this week. Yesterday, of course, in India, this morning in Israel, in Iran, and that confronted us in a way with not only the merits and the merits of aviation, but also the dangers of aviation. Aircraft, missiles, airspace used as a strategic weapon in international relations. But at the same time, we also realize that aviation brings us together. So that tension will be reflected in many topics which we are going to discuss today, and which is also reflected in the many provisions, the legal provisions of regulations, of treaties, with which we work in our daily practices. The merits of aviation, facilitating trade, bringing people from one place to another, among other things here in Rome. I'll come back to that in a second. So the potential of aviation is enormous, but also the danger of aviation is enormous and impressive. At the same time, I also congratulate Laura with choosing today for this conference, because also in the legal field we had important events this week. So not only in the factual world, but also in the legal world. 261 updating yesterday was discussed, and then of course an important decision given by the High Court in London, which was already explained excellently, eloquently yesterday in a panel chaired by our friend Laura. Today we have a couple of other subjects on our agenda. Accessibility is one of them. Accessibility, which I must say somehow has been an important facet of the conferences which Laura organizes very aptly every year. And that is something which has also to do with care. Care of passengers, care of everyone who makes use of the facilities of aviation. And I know that this is a special focus, a point of attention for Laura, not only in her professional environment, but also in her mindset. Because care, if there's something she's doing with a lot of dedication, it's taking care of us here in this, during these days. Last but not least, we will talk about sustainability. And again, I try to link that to the place where we are, Rome, the internal city, the durable city which survives all the centuries. And where could we better discuss sustainability of aviation than here in Rome, in the able hands of, again, the panel chairperson, the first panel chairperson, Laura. With these words, I wish you, I hope you get a bit in the mood for yet another fantastic day here in Rome, stimulating, fascinating discussions. And I'm honored and pleased to give the floor now, I hope he's here, to the distinguished and honorable chairman of ENAC, the Italian Civil Aviation Authority, Pierluigi Di Palma.
welcome. Yesterday, I was in New York with the Minister of Disability for the important conference in ONU building. But yesterday, I decided to come back the day before to stay in this meeting because I think that it's very important meeting for us. And then I want to the welcome for this day. Esteemed colleagues, dear friends, as President of ENAC, the Italian Civil Aviation Authority, I am honored to take part in this event dedicated to the evolution of air transport regulation. I would like to begin by thanking Laura Pierallini and your team for once again promoting such a significant opportunity for dialogue, exchange of ideas, and collective reflection. The theme of this year, Smart Skies, Legal Horizons, highlights a key message: the future of aviation must be both innovative and responsible. The regulatory decisions we make today will shape the skies of tomorrow. Despite the many global challenges, we have the opportunity to move forward if we act quickly and with a clear shared vision. Regulation plays a key role in this, and the regulatory frameworks are essential tools to promote sustainability and ensure fair competition. But without harmonized international rules, especially on environmental issues, progress becomes difficult. In this context, ENAC has always supported the use of Sustainable Aviation Fuels, SAF. They are safe, ready to use, compatible with today's aircrafts, and can reduce aviation's carbon footprint immediately. To encourage their use, we need clear incentives, shared standards, and stronger regulatory and financial support. Sustainability is today deeply connected to investments. This is both a challenge and a real opportunity. To keep aviation competitive, we must be flexible and informed. On the technological front, we must bridge the gap between regulation and innovation. We need flexible, data-driven, and adaptive rules like those ENAC is working on, based on principles rather than prescriptions, while maintaining safety at all times. Today, we also looking toward a new frontier, advanced airspace and mobility. Suborbital flight, which began as technological challenge, are now opening the way for point-to-point intercontinental travel. ENAC, in cooperation with the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, has already developed regulations for spaceports and suborbital operations. Together with Virgin Galactic, ENAC has also launched a flexibility study for test flights from the Grottaglie spaceport, is my country, Grottaglie. However, this path cannot be followed in isolation. Aviation is global by nature and requires shared regulatory solutions. ENAC is committed to supporting the governance that will emerge from the upcoming regulatory framework, working closely with both national and international institutions. At the international level, we actively collaborate with ICAO and other partners through initiatives such as ACT-SAF and capacity building programs to support a sustainable transition in global aviation. The Italian aviation community is strongly committed to facing these new challenges. The choice we make today in sustainability, innovation, and governance will shape the future of aviation. Thank you for your attention and commitment to a more sustainable future for air transport. I wish you a productive and inspiring conference. So thank you.
So thank you, Pierluigi, especially because you came back from New York City expressly for us. So this is a big honor for us. Now, the two opening speeches have been more than on schedule. We have a very, ambitious program today, so a couple of practical information. First of all, there is no coffee break, but the coffee station will be available until 11:30, so you have water and you can take a coffee. And this is for the audience. For my speakers, I really would ask to stay in the allotted time, and sorry, but I will be watching the time. I'm the general moderator, and as I did yesterday also with my colleague Marco, who forgave me, I would take the liberty to, interrupt if somebody will go further compared to the time allotted. For the same reason that we want to make the conference very fast, I will call the five speakers of the first two panel of the first focus to stay together. Then the first one will be Nicolas Rallo, who will update us on the future trend of ICAO. I will not introduce the speaker with their bio, as I said yesterday, because if you look at this modern badge that you have the QR code, which has all the bios of all the speakers. So please, Nicolas, come to the stage. Nicolas is the regional director of ICAO, based in Paris. Are you based in Paris? And he is still running, and when he was in Doha with Linda and other friends, he had a small incident, what was it? And so, but he came nevertheless. So, Nicolas, please take your seat, and then I will leave the floor. The second speaker is Rita Souza from IASA. Rita, can you come to the floor? The third speaker is Jörg Eberhardt, at present CEO of ITA Airways, but before Air Dolomiti and Lufthansa. Then we have Mildred Tregeder from Boeing Company, and Andrea Marotta from the Italian Civil Aviation Authority. For more information about their CV, please look at the QR code. Now, I leave immediately the floor to Nicolas. Are you standing? Okay. And Nicolas will have the privilege to speak for 50 minutes, but it is a privilege that he has requested a couple of times because he's going to present the sustainable future from ICAO.
Grazie di cuore, Laura. Grazie per l'invito. Thank you very much for having me. Distinguished colleagues, dear friends, I see many friends here, many long-term friends. A very good morning to all of you. I am delighted to address you and to do so at a very particular moment, that is 3 months before the assembly, the 42nd session of the ICAO Assembly. Can you raise your hands if you have ever participated in ICAO Assembly? Can you raise your hands if you participated to 2 assemblies? 3 assemblies. I stop here because otherwise it will reveal your age. My first assembly was in 1999, in another century. I'm not sure, maybe some of the young students from Laura were not even born. The assembly is the most important event in international civil aviation. This is where representatives from our states, 193, gather to tackle key issues for the present and the future of aviation. A present which is becoming more and more challenging. As it was highlighted by Professor De Leon, it's unfolding before our very eyes, especially regarding conflict zones and other evolutions. And of course, I want to join my words to the very wise and caring words of condolences expressed yesterday by Professor for the tragic accident where a number of people lost lives in India. My heart's feel for them. I know what it means. I used to be an investigator for many years, and this is also part of our social responsibility, not to just conduct the investigation in the most thorough and independent manner, but to also care for survivors and the families of victims. We'll be talking about social responsibility of ICAO. This is maybe not the part where we are most performing. I can witness, we talked about accessibility. I think we have ideals, we have strategies, but the plans, the actions, and the results, I can testify, are definitely not yet there, at least not consistently. I will not have a quiz this year. We had it last year, and remember it was, yes, so maybe some of you know it. What is ICAO and what is ICAO is not? You remember, is ICAO a regulator? No, it's not. Its first mission is to be responsible for global standardization. We talk about standard, recommended practices, and of course, plans and policies, not just SARPs and guidance material. The regulators are the states, and in very few exceptions, like the European Union, because of the treaties, the competence is transferred from the member states to the Union. But ICAO's mandate has progressively evolved. You remember, we talked about that last year, from standardization to standardization and auditing of states' capabilities for safety oversight and security oversight, but also implementation support, that is assistance to states, strategic and technical support. However, clearly today, like many of you, we face a resource challenge. It's been 15 years, 15, that resources have not increased, although the domains that we're working on have increased tremendously, including climate change, LTAC, conflict zones, new entrants, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and commercial space that was mentioned by the president of ENAC. All this without additional resources. So what's the solution? Of course, to get more resources. Our Secretary General is advocating for that all the time, but it's also to transform ourselves. I think now I will switch to the next slide. Technology is working. So, what did we do? We issued a strategic plan. It may be something very familiar for some of you working in the industry, but for ICAO, it is the very first time in 80 years. So I will discuss about the strategic plan because it will affect every single one of you in the aviation community, in the legal community, in the judicial community, and I was very happy to interact with this morning with the General Prosecutor of the Netherlands. And I'm delighted that we have this forum to exchange. So complimenti, ancora grazie Laura, for this opportunity. This strategic plan, as I said, I will give the highlights, but it will be nothing if it's not translated into national commitments, national plans, if these plans are transformed into actions and actions into result. Otherwise, it will remain a piece of paper or an electronic document. This plan is quite novel for ICAO. It's written in plain language. You know that we have so many acronyms, we're so aviation-centric, no one can understand us. A prime minister cannot understand us. Multilateral development banks with which we engage, the World Bank and others, cannot understand us. The general public cannot understand us. This one, anybody can understand. It also focuses on outcome-oriented strategic goals, and these goals are written in a way that they will still be relevant in 2050 and even beyond. So let's look at them. This slide is very important to understand the context of the industry, the aviation industry. And remember, we're talking about the global industry, not just Europe, where we have some constraints, but states like India, precisely, where just a small percentage of the population is flying, and India is 1.4 billion inhabitants. So in Europe, I don't want to offend anyone. You know, I have two citizenships, Italian and French. I'm doubly European, but I'm a UN citizen, right? Citizen of the world. There's no UN citizenship, but this is how I feel. And in Europe, we have a tendency to be too European-centric, and to forget about the rest of the world that wants to fly. Even European wants to fly, but others want to fly, and some have never flown in their lives. So by 2050, we anticipate that passenger traffic will triple, almost triple, 2.7. And air cargo traffic will double by 2050. In this slide, I think we see the accelerating trajectory of this growth. Look at 1944. What is 1944? Signature of the, don't be sure. Oh, who said that? At least we have one person who is not sure. Where are you from, sir? Excellent. So you're not even jet lagged? Excellent. Incredible. Like our president, superheroes. So it took 40 years to reach 1 billion passengers. And then 2 billion passengers, it's about just 19 years. And just now, we have 4.6 billion passengers. So this is really an extraordinary growth. And the only way forward to manage this, regarding all the issues, I'm thinking of aviation safety in particular, because we reach a level of ultra safety. We're not comparable to other modes of transport. If anything, we may be comparable to the nuclear industry. So whatever you see in the media, of course, one accident is a tragedy and should be avoided. And this is why we have the positive safety culture, which is called Just Culture here in Europe. This is why we need to better understand each other from the legal community, aviation community, judicial community, because we need both an administration of justice, whether we're talking about civil or penal proceedings, but also we need to do more to aggressively look for hazards. And this is why we have to depenalize the reporting of incidents. So we reach a level of safety which is ultra safety, but we need to do more, because just statistically, if we don't do even more than what we're doing today, which is a lot, statistically, we will have more accidents. So this vision that you see here captures an ambition, which is a safe, secure, and sustainable international civil aviation system that connects the world for the benefit of all nations and all people. This all is very important. I will go back to the implications of this simple word. It rests on three fundamental goals. Again, very ambitious. The first one is zero fatalities in aviation. Whether it's due to safety or security, you know the difference. It's an act of unlawful interference. In security, it means that there's an intention. The second, we commit to achieving net zero CO2 emissions in international civil aviation by 2050. This is an acronym in 4 letters. Which one? See who is awake? What do we call this ambitious goal? Long term? You see, I promised not to do a quiz, but of course you know the long-term global aspirational goal, the LTAG of net zero emission by 2050. Third, and this is quite new, we want to ensure that aviation serves as an integral part of a thriving, connected transport system that leaves no country behind. So, our mission is clear: to lead for ICAO, to lead more than ever international civil aviation as a key driver of socio-economic development, and for that to further enhance safety, security, and the sustainable growth of civil aviation. And of course, we don't do that on our own. We have our industry. I'm particularly pleased to see our good colleague Mildred here. The industry, the operators, the service providers, the regulators, it's really a partnership. Remember that ICAO develops the global standards, policies, and plans, but states make them an operational reality. And to make them an operational reality, we have to make them a legal reality. So here, the strategic objectives of ICAO that you knew, there were 5 of them. They will be replaced by these strategic goals, 6 of them. They are organized very differently. They're organized in 3 parts. The ones on top are basically what is visible to the public. The outcomes that matter. Every flight is safe and secure. Aviation is environmental sustainability. Aviation delivers accessible and reliable mobility for all. The second set of goals there in the bottom, they outline how, not what we will deliver, but how we will deliver this, how we will guide international alignment to achieve these outcomes, and all of them will be measured by metrics. In safety, we use to metrics. In environment, we're more and more used to using metrics. I hope I'm not going too fast, but I don't want to take time off. Yes, thank you. So I have your blessing, Laura, I'm fine. So let me turn to our fourth and most fundamental strategic, ensuring that every flight are safe and secure. These are inseparable, and it's interesting to pair them because more and more of the risks cannot be defined as safety or security. We talk about cyber security, but cyber affects safety and security. Conflict zones affects security and safety. Artificial intelligence, etc. So it makes even more sense to talk about that, and rather than talking about safety risk management, to talk about risk management and maybe a more holistic risk management. I'm not too fond about the word integrated because security has its, particularities and I would say restricted channels. I talked already about the partnership that is needed amongst all involved, industry, regulators, ICAO, to make this a reality. And of course, we have international and regional organizations that help us. This strategic goal is very known. I discussed this in detail last year, but it is really multifaceted and ambitious. Last year, I focused on the LTAC, but we just don't have the LTAC. We also need to recognize the challenge of aircraft noise, and especially around airports. Many operational restrictions at airports stem from actually noise complaints, impacting our ability to have access to critical low-altitude airspace and to increase capacity. This wise, our goal emphasizes both the reduction of emissions and the balance, the famous balanced approach. I'm looking at the Netherlands because this is, of course, something that was highly discussed, the balanced approach regarding aircraft noise. The other important point is climate change adaptation, because our airports are also affected by climate change. We've seen episodes of floods and others very recently. So this will require exceptional cooperation, but also innovation, and again, cooperation amongst all stakeholders. This one is particularly dear to my heart. It's about mobility, and this is to ensure that aviation delivers reliable, accessible, and seamless travel for all. I could speak about that for hours, but we have to think about the most vulnerable or the most challenging part of the systems. This is true for states, this is true for regions, this is true for individuals. I will be very simple. We have states, all of them have specific challenges, but some are more challenged than others. Landlocked countries, small island developing states, regions. I'm sorry, but my passport is Italian, but my heart is Sicilian. Islands, Sicily and Sardinia. You have territorial discontinuity. We need to pay special attention because there's no other choice other than taking the ferry or the train in the ferry. So it's key to think about the islands. Greece has done an admirable job, actually, in that. Maybe other states could take example from them. I could speak about this for hours, but individual with special needs. I remember once crossing from, I think, Napoli to Procida, and I read the words, was many years ago, diversamente abili. In Italian means differently able, not disabled, differently able. If there was this step was not here, this, I think, podium will not be accessible to me. And what I can tell you, it's been 2 months with reduced mobility. I've had horror stories to tell. But I have one set of compliments, and this is for Aeroporti di Roma. Aeroporti di Roma, are you here? Complimenti. I think this is, so far, the best treatment I've had. And I make a point not to say VIP, VVIP, because when I had that in some states, Even in Africa, it's totally different reality. But you did it without any information on who I was. Congratulations, Aeroporti di Roma. I think it's important. You have invested, and we're seeing the result. That's what I was saying. Strategy is one thing. Plan is another thing. Action and result, I think we're seeing results. So once again, congratulations. Let me turn to a core principle, which is no country left behind. As I said, and I will be very short, some states are more challenged than others. So we need customized support. And this is why the implementation support part of ICAO is fundamental. But not just that, the ability to mobilize resources. And for that, we should not talk about aviation because nobody hears us. Not even I tell you in Ukraine, I'm involved with the government there, with the World Bank. If we talk about aviation only, nobody will listen to us. We need to talk about socio-economic development. We need to talk about connectivity, about sustainable infrastructure, about sustainable human capital and strong institutions, everything where aviation can play a major role, not just in states that are challenged like Ukraine, that need to restart operation, but every single state. So I beg you to make aviation a very clear part of the national development plan. Check your national development plan in every country, in Poland, in the Netherlands, in Italy, is aviation there? If it's not there, we have more work to do. So let's continue. Okay, I'll go to the conclusion. So I'm always there. So before concluding, just one thing, and it's very important to you, the slides I made available to you is the legal part. The legal part was in the background. It was not part of the strategic objectives of ICAO. Now we have a strategic goal. And why? Because adapting the international legal framework and the national framework to the new threats, to the new reality, will be an integral part of this solution. So I'll leave these two slides with you as a reference. Definitely, I'll be happy to talk about that. So in conclusion, I just want to highlight that the future of aviation is bright, but it needs cooperation, it needs commitment. And as we move forward, as I said, let us remember that our work not only impacts the aviation sector, it impacts the global community as a whole. Dear Laura, dear colleagues, I thank you for your attention, and I wish you a very fruitful conference. No problem.
Sì, grazie. I hate to be the bad girl, the moderator who stopped because we could have listened to the presentation from Nicolas for hours. But ICAO is doing really a lot. And when you asked how many people was in the assembly, Linda can testify, also Fabio, dear friend, they can testify how much is going on. And now we move to another speaker, who's my friend Rita Souza from IASA, and we continue with illustration of future trends and what the authority are doing. Rita, do you want to speak from there or from the podium? Okay, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I would like to thank Laura for the kind invitation. I'm very pleased to be here on behalf of EASA, the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, which is a regional agency based in Cologne, Germany, and we do not have the same antiquity as ICAO, so our aspirational goals are formatted very much aligned with ICAO, but are formatted for a shorter period of time. So I'd like to go through some of our aspects of that of the EASA mission, but first I'd like to quickly give you a very short summary of the EASA's evolution of mandate, created in 2002 as a formal successor of the then Joint Aviation Authorities. Many of you probably worked still with that informal organization, and established in 2002 by the European Union, and it initially only has competencies in the domains of aircraft airworthiness and environmental protection. And the importance of the creation of this agency is that for the first time, a regional body assumes the functions of a state of design under the framework of the Chicago Convention. But the mandate has been developed very rapidly and in a broad way, because in 2008, the EASA's domains are expanded to include air operations, air crew and third country operators, moving then to ATM, ANS, and aerodromes. And finally, in 2018, we had a new regulation that, I'd like to go back. In 2018, our competencies in terms of rulemaking and certification and oversight in the EU are expanded to drones, or whatever threshold of kilograms, and we have a step now on urban air mobility and cybersecurity, and also an important mechanism that has been used by some organizations, that they can transfer the oversight from their national regimes to EASA. And so far we've had about 5 organizations actually applying that mechanism under Article 65 of our basic regulation. This is a graphic evolution of the mandate. As you see, there were, my colleague Nicola referred to the fact that aviation is inserted in a bigger world. So we don't live isolated. So what happens, especially in these very rapid shifting times that we've been going through in the last 8 years, that agency's mandate evolved not only within its basic EU regulation, but other regulations that started applying, expanding, so to speak, the role of EASA, namely in the domains of cybersecurity and environmental protection with a reinforced role, and of course the pandemic, the COVID-19 also forced the agency as a regional body to take measures of information and protection of passengers that were not initially foreseen in its mandate. The EASA has a goal as well. Our mission is to provide safe air travel for EU citizens in Europe and worldwide. There is a great concern and aspiration of the agency to not be Eurocentric and to develop good international relations with other parts of the world. And in this sense, the mission of the agency revolves around 5 strategic themes. And those strategic themes are safe, global, green, innovative, and resilient. Not very far away from ICAO's strategic plan. And given the limitations of time, I will just point out some of the key areas in these strategic goals. So, in terms of safety, I would highlight 3 key points, and one of them is regarding the process of safety risk management. So instead of being a punitive system, EASA tries to have efficient safety risk management systems that are replicated by the national competent authorities, and to identify the risks in a document that is publicly available in the European Plan for Aviation Safety, where safety risks for aviation and international air transport are identified, and a number of actions are foreseen for the agency to cope with that. Then the fact that the risk, as you know, the agency has some oversight functions of the national competent authorities in the European Union. And there is a shift from constant monitoring to a risk-based oversight. And that is quite an innovation in the development of the agency's oversight functions. And one last key point, I would draw the attention to the new regulations on information security management, which were not present initially in our basic regulation, but now it's a strong concern, where EASA also has a role, and there are dedicated EU requirements for cybersecurity in the aviation industry. In terms of global, of course, We aim to have a positive, effective implementation score resulting from the ICAO USOAP audit that we had in February and March this year. All points out that it will be a score that will be beyond 90%, so that is a motive of satisfaction, of course. And in here we aspire and have a very strong will to continue effectively contributing to ICAO, namely on representing EU interests in ICAO General Assemblies. And in terms of global influence, it's one of the aspirations of the agency to export EU standards, and that is shown in some of the international agreements celebrated between the EU, EASA, and some member states. And I will point out to the EU, USA, BASA. We just had a conference between EASA and FAA just the past 2 days in Cologne. And finally, the first implementation of the China Joint Committee, an implementing committee of the bilateral agreement with China, and other agreements will follow. In terms of sustainable aviation, I would point out that we have now published our 4th environmental report of 2025, and the agency has an active role in the mechanism of flight emissions label integrated in the EU strategy for environment. For the innovative aspect of the agency, we have seen how the world and society and aviation are evolving and changing very rapidly, which requires from any regulator a lot of flexibility. And that is shown now in this concentrated effort in prioritization and simplification of rulemaking and a regulatory framework that is proposed by the agency. And also a very focused attention to artificial intelligence and its impact in aviation. I will invite you to, when it is published, for the public consultation for the next concept paper on artificial intelligence in aviation and what kind of impacts it will have, not only operationally, but also on the legal framework. Finally, resilience. I would say the resilience in all aspects. The first one is, of course, financial sustainability. For that reason, the new regulation on fees and charges charged by the agency to the industry is soon to be adopted. The agency is going through a deep process of digitalization to keep up with modern times. But the main point at this stage is workforce. There is, like ICAO referred to, we are an agency of around 800 nationals from all the European Union. And people retire, people leave to other positions. So there is a concern in renovating also the workforce that is capable of actually adapting to the new challenges that are there. And this are the key points that I wanted to share with you. Of course, you have a presentation, and you're more than welcome to ask any questions. Thank you for your interest.
Thank you not only for inspiring presentation, but also to keep the time, and sorry for being asking. Now we move to the next subject, which is the Sustainable Aviation Fuel, Andrea, which was inspired by Jörg Eberhardt. He asked me to set up this panel. Jörg, the floor is yours.
So in order to stay in time, each of us has 3 minutes now, so let's try. So we all heard about the regulation, or we all know the regulation framework of SAF, of CO2, SAF between Sustainable Aviation Fuel between 2030. We have to increase from now 2% to 6%. CO2 50% reduction, then until 2050, 70% SAF and CO2 zero. What do we do as airlines? There are basically, we have 3 pillars in order to reach these targets, these objectives. First one is, of course, technology. Technology meaning more efficient engines, more efficient aircraft. And we are already investing into new technology as ITA, but also Lufthansa Group is doing so. And so in our calculations, just 1/3 of the effect should come from new technology. The second part is, I would say, efficiency, but not only efficiency in terms of operational efficiency, but also efficiency of airspace. For example, we've seen on the slide of EASA, we've seen CESA. Hopefully progress will increase, because it's little progress for many years there. And we are quite, say, doubtful that with this speed we have seen so far will bring us to the goal. We have to speed up there. Talking about a single European sky, talking about optimization of the airspace. The airspace is not full, it's just organized in a bad way. Third pillar is SAF. When it comes to SAF, we all know we have little quantities, and according to the law of the market, if there's not a quantity, price is going up. Also, price of production is high, apart from availability, and this leads to a price that is 3 to 5 times higher than conventional fuel, which is, of course, a big challenge for us as airlines. As already this year, we have to put 2% of SAF, or mix 2% of SAF, and then triple it until 2030. And on the technical side, we have certifications for most of the engines with 50% so far. So an engine as today, or the engines we fly today, can take 50% SAF. Not yet 100%. There are plans for certifying until 2030, because this might help a lot, because it depends on the production of SAF, where we have several, let's say, production sites, and if we can take 100% where the production is, it might be more efficient rather than to transport SAF, to have logistics of SAF and more cost at this site. Also very challenging, where does it come from? Where will the volumes come from in the future? Of course, investments are needed, but there we have this chicken-egg problem. If there's no offtake, there's no investment. If there's no investment, there's no offtake. And in order to resolve this solution, we need the public sector. We cannot do it by our own. We need the governments. As in the US, we can study. There are incentives for SAF. In Europe, so far, nothing. It's all left to the airlines. And this is altogether, if I make a summary, in order to have the goals achieved in 2030, 50, all stars need to be aligned. And it becomes, as far we move each year, it becomes less probable that we will manage this situation in order to have all stars aligned. And somebody has to say this sooner or later, because we all talk about the same thing. And the elephant in the room is, of course, is it possible to do it? I mean, theoretically, it's still possible to do it, and we have the calculations. But in practice, to have all stars aligned, let's see. Thank you.
Thank you, Jörg, for having so briefly but eloquently illustrated the position of an airline and our Italian airline. And now we move to Mildred Tröger, who's a liaison officer with ICAO, based in Montreal. And do you want to speak from the podium or from the... Okay, so the floor is yours, because you have been named several times by everybody, so Boeing is here.
Thank you so much, Laura, also for inviting me to join this distinguished panel. Good morning, dear guests and friends. Not an easy day today to be here on stage. We are all saddened by the loss of life caused by Air India flight 171 yesterday, and our thoughts are, of course, with the families of the victims, the first responders, and all affected. Today's topic is Sustainable Aviation Fuel. I have some slides here. And so sustainability at its core is about being resilient. It's hard to think of a sector who has shown more resilience over the past couple of years. We have faced pandemics, natural disasters, economic recessions, and through it all, aviation continued to grow at nearly twice the pace of GDP, which is very impressive. And with this also comes a high demand of airplanes. According to our forecast, it's about 40,000 airplanes over the next 20 years. And our customers, like ITA, Lufthansa Group, they are continuing to invest billions in more fuel-efficient, capable airplanes. Boeing takes a multifaceted approach to decarbonization of aviation, and kind of a lot of the themes were already mentioning by Jörg in his opening remarks. Please move to the next chart.
Sorry, there is any
And
problem with the slides? Because she cannot move.
So in principle, we are addressing decarbonization of aerospace in 5 pillars. And the most important one is, in addition to renewable energy, also advanced technology and fleet renewal. When we zoom out and look at the global installed fleet, today still 30% comprises on the latest technology of aircraft, which means 70% are still being yesterday's technology, and deploying the latest generation of aircraft is one of the most significant contribution to the reduction of CO2. So historically, each generation reduces fuel use and efficiency by 20 to 30%. Another important factor already mentioned is operational efficiency. So the famous 10%. So optimized ATM is a critical component. And what we are doing as OEMs is basically making sure we have the latest equipment and services to support advanced procedures, and also working with airlines, ANSPs, on more and more efficiency improvements, such as, for example, trajectory-based operations. When we talk about SAF, it's important to highlight that it's not a SAF or approach, but a SAF and approach. And I think here the big focus is also on advanced technology, because in addition to scaling the production of SAF, we as Boeing also continue to explore other renewable energy carriers and advanced technologies. We are, of course, not a SAF supplier. We have no ambition to become one, but we want to make sure that all our aircraft are 100% SAF capable, and we support the industry at large in scaling SAF. What a lot of people don't know is that actually Boeing is a pioneer in this area. We have a long track record with advancing alternative fuels. And just to give you an example, we were already helping gain approval of SAF for commercial use in 2011. But as I mentioned, it needs to be a SAF end approach. So advanced technology here plays an important role. And as the theme of this panel is also, how can regulators actually help us to further promote advanced technology? I think the first important aspect to consider is that we have all these exciting and radical designs on the horizon for OEMs and engine companies, but they all need to be tested out to deliver the same performance and reliability our customers expect. And that means long periods of testing, but it also means that it's sometimes very hard for us to forecast what are certain levels that we achieve at a certain period or a certain time. And a dangerous trend that we are seeing more and more at a global as well as at the regional level is the adoption of technology forcing standards versus technology following standards, which could stall the pace of fuel renewal basically overnight. The last pillar is market-based measures, and happy to talk about this during the lunch break. In the interest of time, I would move to the next chart, which is basically what are the 5 risk areas that we need to address, and we are working with the regulators to address in order to accelerate SAF supply growth. And this is first and foremost really a stable policy environment. creating more efficient policy, which means eliminating the disadvantages that renewable energy producers face compared to big oil companies. And this includes also redirecting a huge portion of the 1 trillion in subsidies that governments globally grant to fossil fuel. Another aspect is really developing a more comprehensive approach to energy policy. That means advancing SAF production and looking at the increase also at the same time of renewable energy production, from which SAF is deprived. This requires policies to ensure SAF is allocated at an appropriate portion of renewable energy production. So we really need to take a holistic approach here to support the joint use of infrastructure, of co-production and other measures that will also benefit the energy transition for aviation. Another important risk area that we need to address is security of feedstock. And this is really where governance can help us to prioritize feedstocks for aviation. It is crucial because it impacts the sustainability and also cost effectiveness of SAF. It involves securing a stable and reliable supply of raw materials, mitigating supply chain disruption. I think it's one of the big topics for us these days, and ensuring long-term viability of the SAF industry. And just taking Ukraine as an important example that really shows that the feedstock piece and local production are also tied back to energy security. The third risk area is construction risk. That's typically around planning consent and just the fact that some of these are not particularly mature companies. And they don't necessarily have the record of building plans. So from a regulator, it's important that they are provided with planning system linking people to the right EPC partners who can help to build plans, basically supporting matchmaking and working with them on planning system that will also help them if they look for finance. The fourth risk area is technology risk. Banks are often trying to get their heads around emerging technologies. And so first of all, we need to make sure that there is continued research funding and to really mature and accelerate technology development, but also making sure you bring the banks and those financiers into those discussions from an early stage. And then finally is revenue risk. Airlines are inherently challenging to banks, so any project that's based upon offtake from airlines is difficult, and any particular banks want ultimately revenue cover. So basically takeoff cover for the duration of the loan period, which is 10 to 15%, whereas airlines are often only willing to commit to 1 or 2 years of offtake. So how are we closing that gap? And there's an interesting development right now in the UK where they are basically in the process of legislating a revenue certainty mechanism that they picked from another sector and are applying. So we are carefully looking at those developments because we think it could provide a really good model also for other jurisdictions. As the liaison to ICAO, I obviously would also like to highlight that ICAO plays an important role here. The achievement of our net zero goals is expected to require cumulative investment of around 3.2 trillion US dollar between now and 2050. So collaboration with development banks, financial institutions is essential to create viable funding channels. And today, 2/3 of basically all the SAF production is happening in those jurisdictions where you have mandates and incentives. But we have to look at all the countries in the world, and there's really huge potential, and this is also where ICAO can play an important role. So recognizing this, ICAO has launched 2 key initiatives, the XSAF program and the ICAO Finvest Hub. The XSAF program provides assistance, capacity building, and training to member states, while Finvest Hub is really a platform that is designed to connect SAF projects with investors and financial institutions. So the Finvest Hub that was just launched earlier this year is set to directly connect aviation sustainability projects with investors, and is also a matchmaking platform that will create dedicated pathways for scaling the production of SAF. And we are a proud supporter of both initiatives. Around the world, we have supported many feasibility studies in the broader Act SAF framework, and also the Finvest Hub, which I think is right now just becoming operational. We are working hand in hand with the ICAO Secretariat to provide as much support as we can, because we truly believe that there is a lot of potential, and that ICAO Finvest Hub, and that ICAO is uniquely positioned to bring those actors together. So to conclude, 5 billion annual passengers only represent 20% of the world population. And so that means 80% have never set a foot on an airplane, and they deserve to fly safely and sustainably. So in the words of ICAO, we need a transition, and this transition has to be economically viable for both industry and passengers. Thank you.
And last but not least, we give back the floor to the CAA, the Italian CAA, Andrea Marotta, who's in charge of environment.
Distinguished guests, dear friends, let me warmly thank Laura Berlini, but not only Laura Berlini, also the team of Laura Berlini, which every year organize such an interesting meeting, which gave us, which are friends working together in the same sector, the possibility to know each other, to exchange ideas, but first of all, to forecast possible scenarios. Let me thank also Laura, because she begins with such an important thing. She established a rule. Let's be as fast as we can, because we have to discuss. So you were clear, so clarity. You were flexible, flexibility. You were simple, simplicity. These are 3 key words that should be inside all the legal frameworks if we want, as I think our President Enak does, to deal with the pace of innovation and technology. Because technology is very fast, goes in a way that is difficult to catch, but you should be here. We are a lot of lawyers, a lot of people dealing with this, living each day with rules. Rules are fundamental, but should take the pace, should be principle-driven, and as the President says at the beginning of the meeting, the choice we make today are the way we will see aviation in the near future. So let me thanks for this occasion, this opportunity. I'm honored to be here. And thanks also to my president that gave us the possibility to be here on this stage. So let's go. I would like to have a presentation to tell the truth, to be fast, as Laura said. I would like to go through with you on about the presentation. So I would like to talk the fact that regulator, in this very case ANAC, moved since 2019, launching the National Observatory in South. And this is a demonstration of how ANAC, our regulator, decided to have the cooperation inside a particular target, which is SAF, Sustainable Aviation Fuel, which will be not a promise, but our actual jet fuel that we will use in the near future. So we started in 2019. Then we have got also a stakeholder engagement for policy definition. That's really important because, as we said before, flexibility and cooperation with the others is essential. It's the same kind of method, because the method is very important, that ICAO and Nicolas Rallo suggested at the beginning during his speech. After this, we also realized a national roadmap from ANAC, and we send it also to our ministry, because we work always together with our ministry in fracture. And then we have been indicated as the national competent authority to implement ReFuelEU, which is one of these regulations which can be considered, I mean, is it an opportunity, or is it a difficulty or a critical bottleneck? We think in ANAC this is a great opportunity. Only the pessimist sees in difficulties, in negative things, when sometimes there are opportunities. This refuel EU, we're participating in the definition. This rule is an opportunity. We think it's an opportunity. So here you can see a kind of table in which we discuss with the stakeholder, but not only with typical stakeholder, operators, manufacturers, but also with the university, just to understand which kind of policy could be suggested. And you can see in the middle of this table, because it's clear each one has got its particular interest, but it's really important to have tax incentives for use of SAF, tax incentive for feedstock producer, because there is the need. We will reach the 2% target, but we need to reach the other target, and therefore we need a clear supply chain and the right kind of a quantity that give us the possibility to be sustainable, but not only environmentally sustainable, also in terms of economic sustainable, because our sector is essential, is a key factor for developing economies all over the world. From the countries so-called left behind, just should have the chance to improve their activity, and for us. So I want to go through very quickly, also to have a discussion on stage afterwards. And then this is the so-called temple, the Greek temple we use at university talking about Europe or things like that. But there is, the supply side measures, which are important, the demand side measure, which are established on the measure for feedstock security. And then we have got refuel aviation regulation application, and on the the demand supply matches measures, and then the general objective, regulatory frameworks of scaling up in Italy. We are the national competent authority. We work to apply refuel aviation, and we work together. Together is really important, together with aircraft operators, aviation fuel suppliers, airport managing bodies. We know that in the refuel EU, there is a part of the refuel about sanctions. But the ratio legis, the idea underneath, it's also to help the operators to avoid these difficulties. Also to give to the particular to the aircraft operators, the possibility to apply in a simple and clear way this regulation, always dealing with the principle inside the regulation. This is not simple. Simplicity and complexity goes really one near the other, but we have to manage these two aspects also of the regulation. I'm sorry. Then these are numbers. Perhaps everyone here knows this number about fuel, about SAF, about the target, so I would like to go through it. Now, what is needed expecting from regulators and governments? Naturally, as I said before, a clear and stable regulatory framework to unlock investment, because we have to unlock investment. As Mildred said, it's really important to get together the legal framework and finance coming in this sector. It's clear that in this very case, government should help the activity in this field. We know that here in Europe you have got state aid rules, but it's up also to the Commission to understand in which way we can have flexibility and implement measures inspired, for example, to book and claim, which can help the aircraft operators in their dealing with the refuel EU, for example. Everything is connected. It's really important. The way you apply a rule is one of the most important paths that could help us to reach a sustainable aviation future. Then a performance-based, also award economic operators that better contribute to emission reduction. I must say that the emission trading system is a system by which the Commission helps the operation for all the operators using SAF. Then globally applicable, because as our president said, it's important to have a uniformity also between European and ICAO, Nicolas, rules about SAF, because the definition of SAF at European level, at ICAO level, are not exactly the same. We must reach a compromise, this is clear. Then intersectoral, detect and reduce inconsistencies between sustainability framework in different transport sectors. We don't want to create any kind of competition within maritime and aviation. We want to be, and the other keyword there is complementarity, because the system doesn't work, because it's not a simple sector. the aviation sector, but it's a complex net connected to the maritime and to other systems. This is a message also for our ministry. We work together each day with the ministry. And then flexible, I recall book and claim, which should be a measure even if it's in the refuel EU. So I was so fast, I hope to have respected your rule. And so let me say just another word. Each year, last year I was courage about Winston Churchill, but always Winston Churchill. The pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity, the optimist sees opportunity in every difficulty. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Andrea. Really outstanding presentation, and also sorry for the timing. Now, with this, we conclude the first round of the first focus. I would ask the next panelist to come on the stage, and again, a big applause to the panelists of the first. So, we will have now Fabio Nicolai, Deputy Director of the Italian CAA. This morning we have a lot from experts from the Italian CAA. Then Donatella Catapano. Fabio and Donatella will speak about safety in helicopter. And then we will have Katia van Bistenwert. I hope that the pronunciation is good. Please come to the stage. Yeah, we do all together to avoid up and down, if you don't mind. And then Peter Neenan from Stewards, London, and Grégory Laville de la Plagne. They will instead speak about you can take your seat, they will speak about the just culture and again safety in the aviation. Do you prefer to speak from the podium, Fabio and Donatella? You start from the podium.
Cosa devo fare, Laura, per le slide? Qua? Questo verde? Okay. So good morning, everybody. Just joking with Fabio, helicopters has always been seen like the children of a lesser god. And so now is the turn to take you on board of our helicopter for a brief, very brief journey to give you a glimpse of how we are focused on excellence, technology, and innovation, but also unwavering safety. So as a competitor, as OEM, we have always would like to be at the forefront of the vertical lift, not only for the benefit of our customer, but for the benefit also of the shareholder, the stakeholders in general, but also the collectivity. So for the customer is easy because we try to enable all our helicopter just to best meet the missions they are requested to do. And with our supplier along our supply chain, we try to have a relationship as a partnership, industrial partnership, and innovating with purpose, as we said, because we don't have to forget for the innovation, they need to stay within the rules and to be safe. In order to mention the collectivity, so the people, and how we try to meet these missions, in this slide, we can understand that we are trying to provide efficient transport, of course, for our customer, supporting energy operations, because this is in oil and gas sector, and responding to disaster and to keeping community safe for search and rescue and MS. Trying to protect in borders, and of course also strengthen the defense capability, because our helicopters are also in the military sector. So I said at the beginning, innovating with purpose. I've heard about all what is doing the fixed wing in the innovation. We are almost on the same page. Of course, we try to create a platform that is autonomous. We are just on the verge of, introducing electrification propulsion in our helicopters, as I said also probably last time. and comfortable helicopter, more and more comfortable in terms of noise, of vibration, of acoustic and harshness. The material we are using are sustainable more and more and advance in technology. Digitalization is something that was born in the aviation sector. Everybody knows that the digital twin, the first one is the simulator. And so digitalization, we continue, we keep on going with the digitalization, but also with the AI, as everybody knows, AI now is part of the game. I don't think it will be really a game changer, but it will facilitate a lot of innovation. Also, our design is changing for accommodate passenger experience and so on. Everybody spoke about SAF, the SAF, and also our helicopter are now experiencing SAF more than 50%. The obstacles and the downsides have already been discussed by my previous colleagues, namely the difficulty to find the raw material, difficulty to available supply chain and infrastructure, the costs that are enormous, but most of all, the regulation. Certification for this kind of use are still on the way because, of course, there are safety reasons behind the use of SAF for the engines and so on. Then, in relation to the safety, how has the environment in the helicopter sector changed? If we start in our experience, in 1970, the legacy platform where we started with, there were very limited safety standards for the EASA authorization and certification, and also for FAA and or other rules, very few. Then just in 10 years, the situation changed, and in other 10 years, more and more, and the basic safety standard related to bird strike, fatigue test, emergency landing condition, the engine, everything has been done, the seating crashworthiness, so we introduce more and more standard for the safety of the helicopters, and nowadays we are modern and intrinsic safety of our design and helicopters is even more than what is requested by the certification authority for our certification. So we don't not only, of course, have to comply with the standard rules, but of course we want to go further. And indeed, in this slide, I show you how we meet the most demanding safety regulation. In particular, also Type 4 safety requirement for the emergency exit, crashworthy fuel tanks, and the run-dry capability, so the possibility to continue for 60 minutes without lubricant, and the possibility to ditch in an easy way, but what we have to respect, as I said, is a huge number of rules and standards, not only EASA, FAA regulation. We have different applicable law in different legislation. We have our baseline laws as Italian Codice della Navigazione and other laws, and are also non-European law, applicable law, depending on where you sell helicopters and which is the national certification authority. So we have to abide a very huge certification standard rules. This means that, like here you can have just a quick image to understand where we are moving. This is, of course, something that is necessary for the safety. And so we have the evolution of a European Plan for Aviation Safety for EASA, and we have EASA has amended the EROPS, and of course ENAC amended the EASA EROPS. So sometimes is difficult to move in this frame, but we do it, and so the safety standards are absolutely respected and overcome. In this other slide, there is just a mention of some of the safety introduction that we make as a helicopter OEM, of course, in particular for helicopter medical service, so the night vision image system and the minimum, the HMS VFR for flying with the minima and obstacle awareness and avoidance and other things like that. But we have also case law that sometimes leads to new safety rules. One case, probably everybody know about Kobe Bryant that dies in a crash. The helicopter was a Sikorsky helicopter, and the authority found it out that there were, as usual, main causes for such a big accident. The root cause was the pilot error in that case, because he continued flying into instrument meteorological condition under visual flight rules, so there was a disorientation. But also the weather under those circumstances was a casual factor, because there was a fog and low visibility. There was Kobe Bryant that needs to land, to take over, and so the situation was this. But at the end, the investigation, the authority from the United States, the NTSB, find out the root cause and decided to include many rules. Most of the rules were directed towards the operators. In particular, simulator, for the simulator for the pilots, more hours on the simulator to repeat the potential meteorological disorientation, pilot disorientation. So they asked to have more hours on the simulator for this kind of case. Mandatory safety management system for the operators, so Part 135, and also the flight data monitoring. At the end, all this has been immediately done and accepted by the operators for safety. So just this to say that there are also other cases, but it's important to understand that safety is dictated by the regulator, operator, and OEM should study and should move in this complicated world of rules. But it's for the safety and sake, and so that's more or less what we try to do. We have here a public prosecutor of the Dutch system, and it will be very interesting to hear also from you any kind of insight in relation to what you do in the Netherlands, because we in Italy, in our system, we don't have this kind of specialization. So it will be very interesting to understand also that. So thank you.
To conclude the helicopter session, now we have again on the podium Fabio Nicolai, which is the Deputy General Director at Italian CAA, and he will continue on the safety and helicopter. Fabio.
Good morning to everyone. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to my friend Laura for inviting me to participate in a conference. For inviting me to participate in a conference that is of a great significance and attracts a large and highly competent audience. Today, recalling the title of an Oscar-winning movie, I will talk about the Children of a Lesser God, the helicopter. And in particular, I will speak about the helicopter emergency medical service. European regulation that govern this activity are two, and in particular, the last one is the regulation HEMS 2023-1020, which specifically tailors the operating rules to HEMS. There are several innovations introduced by the amendment 2023-1020. The main ones, just to avoid boring you all, I will speak only about two: helicopter performance for mountain operations and operative procedure and risk assessment. In light of this innovation, INAC, in order to illustrate some aspect of regulation, has issued a technical and operative information and an ad hoc regulation regarding helicopter commercial air transport operation in a hostile environment outside congested areas. And last but not least, frequently asked questions that aim to provide a common and standardized interpretative basis. So now let's look to some figure about the HEMS in Italy, and we see how big is this field, and we have to understand that the peculiarity of the Italian environment involves extended overweather operation, high mountains operation, hoist operation, including night hoist operation in unknown sites. The HEMS story starts in Emilia-Romagna region in June 1986 and has evolved from a pure daylight scoop and run to a 24-hour, 7-day operations. Just to give a dimension of this kind of operation in Italy, I inform that out of 52 bases performing hoist operation in Europe, 41 are located in Italy, accounting for 80% of the entire European civil hoist market. So, who involves this new amendment? Of course, operators, National Civil Aviation Authority, flight crew member, technical crew member, and this is a novelty, contractor service HEMS. The last one represents one of the novelty introduced by the amendment. In fact, now also the regional emergency service personnel will have to understand the risks associated with the emergency medical service missions. And I will explain this point in the next slide. Let us now to see how the various HEMS actors can be protected following the EASA philosophy on acceptable risk concept in according with EASA guidance material. So we see that the most protected must be people, third parties, people and things. Lower protection is for passenger, patients, and doctor, and the lowest protection is for crew members. Please allow me as an engineer to make a little digression about the concept of risk. Risk is probability times a severity. So if I have to evaluate the risk associated with a very severe event and I want to have a low risk, the probability must be low. An example. If I asked any of you to put a few tons of fuel next to a 1020 degree that are in an oven, you probably wouldn't take such high risk. Nevertheless, the aircraft engine, the oven at 1200 degrees, is located at about 1 meter away from the wing, in which there are tons of fuel. This is possible because the probability that the fuel touches with the oven is kept at a very low level. So, in a nutshell, the risk matrix tells us that we must avoid red zones and that we can accept other combination of severity and probability by introducing precautionary measures. This is said by an engineer or by a pilot like I am, and that can be usefully commented by many lawyers present in the room. And I am really happy there is a public prosecutor that could help us to understand how could be seen the zone orange and yellow. That is something that is very interesting, because full safety is no flight. So this is another interesting innovation that will have significant repercussions. Basically, it is for the medical professional to decide between HEMS or air ambulance, not the pilot. For that reason, medical staff who undertake to task medical sorties should be fully aware of the additional risks that are potentially present under emergency medical service operation. So this is very important, because in this moment, so it's the medical personnel that will establish to do an HEMS mission or an air ambulance mission that is completely different if we see the missions on the risk point of view. But fortunately, once a decision between HEMS or air ambulance has been taken by the medical professional, the commander makes an operational judgment over the conduct of the flight. So we have some degree of freedom. This is another example of the regulation, the new regulation that allow HEMS operation in the mountains to be carried out by helicopter that, although twin engine, have limited performance that do not guarantee a safe forced landing in the event of an engine failure. And this is something that we could discuss together. So I don't want to be boring, so there are some other novelties, but I am really I can really very fast, and I don't want to spend your time. And I see Laura, and I think Laura will be happy. So just to finish my presentation, I would like that INAC is responsible for implementing and overseeing EASA regulation at the national level, adapting them to peculiarly Italy's environment. The Italian emergency medical service is complex and extremely developed. ENAC's mission is to minimize risk exposure without compromising the medical services effectiveness. With its perimeter, ENAC is entitled to provide technical and operative instruction or frequently asked questions to tailor EASA regulation in accordance with Italian specific environment. I think, Laura, I've been very fast. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Fabio. I must be very severe this morning because everybody speaks about the time constraint. So next panel is about safety and just culture. And as Donatella mentioned before, the Netherlands are privileged to have a dedicated aviation prosecutor, and we are more privileged and honored to have Katja van, I'm very bad with Dutch surname, Bisterwert, who is the aviation prosecutor in Amsterdam. Katja, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Laura. It's a privilege for me to be here. Context, trust and transparency and legal certainty are the key words for me as a prosecutor in the Netherlands. I gave a lot of presentations with my colleague, and most of the time they are 1 hour or so I'll try my best to put it in 8 minutes. For 6 years now, I'm the aviation prosecutor of the Netherlands. And the first one was appointed 41 years ago. That's a long time. So I'm absolutely not the first. Here's some of my successors on a picture. The first one was appointed after a signal of our aviation police. We have an aviation police that's very terrific to have that. And the aviation police was established in 1953. And they brought a signal to the public prosecutor service that they saw different approaches in the Netherlands by the prosecutors at aviation cases. So they pointed out, isn't it possible to have one aviation prosecutor for the whole of the Netherlands? We listened to that, and in 1984, the first prosecutor was assigned. And now I'm the prosecutor for 6 years, as I told. The aviation police is a group of people, all men at this moment, and they are very experienced in aviation cases. They are very experienced in the regulations. They can put in files in a way that we, judges and prosecutors, can understand it. That's very important also for the lawyers involved. It's very useful. And they all are educated to investigate all the aviation incidents, occurrences, crashes, etc. And they are all have all a permit to fly, and that's also a pro when you are talking to people in aviation that are have just had an occurrence with his or her plane. The great benefit of one aviation prosecutor is that the approach of all the aviation cases in the Netherlands is the same. Of course, we look at the facts and the circumstances, but when it's quite similar, the approach will be similar. Last year, January 24, we established, expertise center for aviation at our public prosecution service. And we doubled. I was with one other guy, Ako Verhaag, a guy, it's not the way I had to talk about him. He is working on his PhD on just culture right now, and I think he will end it in a month or so. And he's my policy advisor and my clerk. So we are with both. We are handling all the aviation cases, but we want to professionalize our way of working also for our successors. And we want to capture our knowledge, and we want to be transparent. So, and another important issue was the increase of the drones. So we want to make it more professionalized. So I asked for 2 more people. I now have a substitute prosecutor in our club, and another policy advisor, especially for drones. And now that's very useful with the NATO coming up next month. A very important thing, transparency, is that we have a website, and I show at the last slide where you can find it, and there we publish all our decisions. A lot of our decisions end up in a dismissal, and no one hears about it, but we publish them all because we write large letters with all the motivations why we come to that decision, and so everyone in the aviation field can read it. We are a bit behind in the English version, but in Dutch we are really accurate at this moment. We try to make it complete this year. I'm also a member of the Just Culture Task Force. That's a club of the Eurocontrol since a lot of years, and I'm also a co-organizer of the Prosecutor Expert course, also with Eurocontrol, and there we have each half year a course for all people in aviation, judiciary, pilots, ATCers, and other, sometimes of judges. And it's very useful to spread out the word of the just culture and how to use it in aviation cases. The just culture road in the Netherlands was a bit bumpy. We had some major events. We had the Delta incident, Transavia tail strike, and the Turkish Airlines crash, of course. And in these cases were prosecutors involved. But it helped us to build the way we work in aviation cases also. And on the Turkish Airlines case, I will be back later on. Just culture is a legal concept with a background in safety science. And the EU regulation 376 from 2014 is the basis of that. It's about occurrence reporting to the CAA, but also about protecting these reports. And there's a preamble, 36, sorry, where it's all written out, and you can read it on the screen, but it says the civil aviation system should promote a safety culture, facilitating the spontaneous reporting of occurrences. Just culture is an essential element of a broader safety culture which forms the basis of a robust safety management system. And an environment embracing safety culture principles should not prevent action being taken where necessary to maintain or improve the level of aviation safety. So this preamble shows that just culture should be seen in the context of promoting a culture of safety. And actually in a way, as James Reason put it forward a long time ago. A just culture can make people dare to report, and if people dare to do so, organizations are informed. And so organizations can learn. And then it comes down to the organizations being flexible to take the right action. And being flexible also means that you have to be flexible in the attitude towards deviant behavior, And you have to be fair about it, and that creates trust and certainty. Nope. It's not a blame culture, the just culture, how it's described in 376, like it was called in the past. Gross negligence and intent are not tolerated. And experience and training are very important to look at that case. In 376, it was not meant for the criminal cases. It was assigned to each country of the EU to take it into account in their own country and regulate it. And that has been done in the Netherlands. And the big question is, of course, who draws the line? If it's intent, gross negligence. That's not the safety board or the CAA. That's the prosecutor or a judge in some systems. And criminal enforcement is simply said the task of the prosecutor. Why do we need even a prosecutor in aviation cases? Criminal enforcement, that's the main task of the prosecutor. And that's on behalf of society, in the public interest, and according to the rules of law, and the position of victims be given particular attention, of course. And Peter will talk about that later on. There are many differences in Europe, different systems, and I don't have to tell you that, of course, with all these lawyers in the room. But it's important for the way you can take just culture into account. Sometimes it must have its effect in the courtroom. But in the Netherlands, there is an opportunity principle, a discretionary way to look at cases for a prosecutor. A prosecutor can include just culture in his deliberations. And the prosecutor can decide for himself whether to go to court or not in a case. And that's not only in the aviation cases, that's for all cases in the Netherlands. And the factors of general interest are important. Does the prosecution serve society as a whole? And we look at the seriousness of the offense. Oh, sorry.
I don't know whether you hear me. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
You don't need to go to the court to have a second level like we have in Italy of an independent judge?
No.
Oh,
no. In the Netherlands,
really
you decide as a prosecutor
Complete.
what to do. I decide if I will start an investigation, a criminal investigation. In some countries, you are obliged to do so. In Germany, for example, you have to start an investigation, criminal, when there is probably something criminal has been occurred. But it's possible for victims or other people to go to court after my decision not to go to court.
To challenge your
decision. They can complain about that, and then it's possible that the court says you have to go to prosecutor. If you have
Sorry for interrupting,
No, no,
and
no.
also we don't have so much time, but
No,
I was really curious because we have a completely different system, but we will discuss later on.
Okay, yeah. But the factors of general interest are important for the prosecutor. And of course, they can, what I said. In 2024, the EU Court of Justice confirmed that ensuring a high level of civil aviation through Regulation 376 is in the interest of the public. A Dutch news channel wanted to obtain occurrences reported related to the MH17, and the court ruled that the system is in the public interest. It's the system of 376. Here's the text, but I will go on. So, all interests are important, victims, society, etc. But society wants answers what happens about blame and liability. And Peter will talk about that also. We had a Belma disaster in 1992, and the investigation was only 12 days. And that's ridiculous. You can't investigate something like that in 12 days and say nothing went wrong. Honest answers require investigation, and honest answers require context. And we had also a very long investigation, and that was the Turkish Airlines crash. You all know what had happened at that moment. And in the end, there was a dismissal suspicion of Turkish Airlines, Boeing, and the air traffic controlling by the prosecutor of the Netherlands. But the decision was taken in 2011, so 2 years, 1.5 years after the incident. And the Dutch Safety Board had also investigated, and they ended their investigation in May 2010. So why took it so long for the prosecution decision? We had no access to the flight data recorder data. The Dutch Safety Board took it them without consultation, and they didn't want to share the information with us. So the prosecutor had to do it in another way, to find all the information and gather it in other systems to get the same information as that was in the flight data recorder. And that was nearly a year of delay. And now we have a very good contact with our safety board. Next Monday I will be with them talking about the future, etc. But we'll see when a great event happens again in the Netherlands, how it will. For us, the most important thing, I'll skip some slides, is the context. Context matters, and I'll show you a film. And there's no sound.
Fully understand what's going on.
So this says it all for us, this movie, this small movie, because context matters. It's very important for a prosecutor to know what had happened, and we would like to hear it from the persons involved. And that's also very difficult because someone has the right to remain silent, of course, but when there is a very important context, I have to know it, because otherwise I can't take it into account. So in a lot of cases, I have a hearing at our office with a suspect. But I don't want to make my decision only on paper, and sometimes it changes. I think on paper, oh, what's this? And then I talk to someone, and he explains all the circumstances, and then for me, it becomes a dismissal. So it's very important to know the context. And then I can take also in account, is someone reflective, and did he or she take some action in a way to talk to his own flight club, or something like that. So there's growing trust in the Netherlands, transparency and legal certainty, and I think that it's very important to create flight safety. So the just culture principle is very important for the prosecution in the Netherlands. Whew. Yeah? Okay.
you.